Let's talk about container nodes. In this series, we will talk about hierarchy container, content container, the container info node, and the container output. So like always, let's go to our logic view and create a new scene. So you can find these nodes, all that container nodes under the world category, and then you can find here the hierarchy container, the container info, and the container output. So like the name already says, let's start here with the hierarchy container. The hierarchy is a hierarchy node, and once you drop it here, you basically can jump inside this hierarchy container if you double click here on the left side, this little triangle, right? So now you are inside that content container, right? So as you also can see, the content container, if we go out, exactly, so inside double click here, and to go out just double click here, like in other nodes as well. And as you can see, the hierarchy container doesn't have any properties, not really, only here the state where you can put it blocked. But so the hierarchy container is basically to encapsulate logic, yeah, or hierarchy nodes inside one node, right? So this is the only thing what a hierarchy container is doing. You also can create a hierarchy container manually by yourself, right? So let me show you that. So let's delete that, and let's say you want to create some button, right? So let's use a rounded rectangle here, and let's give it some size that it looks like a button. And again, let's make it a bit rounded here, and let's also put here maybe some touch button in front, right? And maybe we also animate it a little bit. So to do that, what I want to do is simply, if I click, I want to have a little bit scale down, scale back up, right, with a mover. So let's do that. Let's put here a mover, and let's do that. Let's put that mover here, and let's connect it to the scaling all, right? And now he's going from scaling -1 to 1, so I just want to have the minimum is 0.9 to 1, something like that. I also want to have it only one click or one shot, right? Let's change that here. We don't want to have the swing. Actually, we want to have the swing. If we nudge it, so this is the other way around. So I want to have the minimum of 1 and the maximum 0.9. And if we nudge it now, then you can see we have that kind of click, but it's a little bit too slow. So let's put it to 0.25. Now let's nudge it. Bam, exactly. Only thing what I have to do now, I simply connect here one of my interactive events, yeah, maybe mouse over or the touch enter, or simply here that single tap event that here, right? Okay, so let's connect our nudge to our single tap, right? So if I click here now with my mouse, then we have that little, yeah, touch animation basically, right? Okay, so this is now our button. Now let's say I want to have many buttons, so I don't want to rebuild this all the time again. So I simply right click here for half a second, and then this menu opens, and here I simply click merge to container, and now we have created a container which contains here our touch button, right? So with this I simply can call this, now let's call it button, and let's put it axis, right? And now I can simply copy that, and as many times as I want, move that, for example, to -5, okay, more -12. Of course, you also can do that with the arrange button, right? And let's put it here to 12. So this is basically everything you need to know about hierarchy container. One important thing with the containers, which maybe makes sense to show you here. You also want to expose values, right? So if we go outside of our container now and we select here our button container, you can see we have no outputs, but probably I want to have access to that clicked, right? To trigger then other things in my scene, right? So to do that, I simply go inside and expose here values. For example, here from my single tap, I simply expose here the single tap and maybe also the touch inside. And if we go outside again, then you can see now already we have now here our values exposed as an output, right? Which I then can bind to other things, right? Of course, you should do that maybe at the beginning, right? Before you copy that buttons. Else, what you also can do, you pretty much can create also a interfacing, right? Let me also quickly introduce the interfacing for Ventuz. So this works especially with container nodes, with the hierarchy node and with the content node. So let's say we have now the position already here on our application, right? So what I want to do here, my first button, right? Control B to block to find it. So this is my first button here. Let's call it also button 1, right? So I want to make this guy an interface container. So I simply select here interface, right? And now the only thing I need to do to bring that new functionality to other nodes, let me delete them and let's copy that again because they are now all yes, basically copies of my first interface container, not internet container, interface container. So with the interfacing, you have a very powerful tool. So let's say you want to add functionality to these buttons, right? And as they are all now interface containers, I only have to add the functionality to one button, and later on I can copy that on all my other interface containers, yeah, of the same copies, of course. So let's say here I want to have some text here. Let's add the axis here. We are here, and let's put also some text to D. Let me quickly see where it is. Let's move it a bit up. Okay, where is it? Right, I forget here to add the text, block text, right? So basically my input, so choose that. And now we should be somewhere there, right? Let's change the color to black, right? Then of course we have a white button. So let's put that to black and let's reset that out. Then let's also go here to our text node and simply center it horizontally and vertically, right, with these two properties. And maybe we make it a bit bigger. And of course, I also want to expose that text, right, because I want to be able to, yeah, basically to change it outside of my container. So I simply expose this value as well. So now let's go outside. And now you can see we have now input, and this is, for example, button 1, right? Okay, to bring that functionality, that new functionality, whatever you build here, to the other interfaces, to the other containers, you simply select it, press and hold Control, and then press and hold the left mouse button and just move it here to the other containers. And as you can see, once you do that, we have now all the same functionality copied to all our other interface containers, right? So we have here now our output button 1, output button 2, output button 3, right? And of course, now you can change here also text on your needs, right? Let's call that button 2. Let's call that button 3. Correct? Okay, so this is the hierarchy container, right? What and how you can use it with interfacing and as well with the exposings. So let's jump now to the next node. So the next node is basically our content container. So let's use this example here. Let's jump into our button here. And now let's say, hey, all this functionality, or you have a very, very complex functionality here inside your button. Let's maybe do a new one. Let's say, okay, we have here outside some logic. For example, we have an event, right? So let's say that's event 1. Let's call it 0, 1. Let's copy it 3 times. 1, 0, 2, and 0, 3. Right? So, and now you want to have this logic, for example, whatever complexity you have, you want to also have that encapsulated in a container. As we are here now in the content editor, we simply select them all, make a right click and say merge to container. And now we created basically a content container, right? So we also can do that the other way around. So let's delete that, guys. Also, let's go outside here, right? So with this little button, you can jump out. So now we have here empty content container. You can do it also another way around because we have the content container here. Let's bring that here, that guy, right? And if we jump inside here, then you can develop things as you wish. Let's say another event. Let's do the same here, 0, 1, and let's copy that. Let's copy that 3 times. All right, only 3 times. Let's call that 0, 2. and 0, 3. And whatever you want to do inside here, right? It's up to you, do logic here, but let's say I want to have at least here my invoke exposed. I want to have this one exposed, and I want to have this one exposed, right? So now let's jump outside again. Let's see what we have. Now we have here 3 invokes, yeah, with 0, 1, 0, 2, and 0, 3. And now you can do with that whatever you want. For example, the logic would be maybe I want to trigger these events here from my button 1, for my button 2, and for my button 3, right? And if I go inside here now and I select here my button 1 and I press it, right? So then my event inside here gets triggered. So hierarchy containers and content containers are basically folders, right? Like in the file explorer on Windows, where you simply can encapsulate hierarchy nodes in the hierarchy container and content nodes, content logic in the content container, right? Okay, let's go to the next one. The next container node we want to talk about. Let's jump out here. The next container node we want to talk about is here. Let's get out of that and let's delete all that guys. So we have a fresh empty scene. Let's also delete this guy. We want to talk about the container info node, right? So the container info node is also a content node. And as you can see, the container info node has no inputs. He only has outputs because this container info node gives you basically informations about a container, right? So let's say we create here a hierarchy container. Let's do that hierarchy container. And inside that hierarchy container, let's create another button. Right, so and inside that hierarchy container, we simply delete the output here. We talk about that very soon. And here we simply say, okay, I want to have axis, I want to have a rectangle, and whatever, some size, blah, 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 right? And I want to have some text again. Let's put some text here and do that like before, text 2D, and select here your block text. Let's give it a color black, a solid color, and we change that to black. And we center it out like before, center and center, and let's make it larger. Okay, so now another thing what I want to do actually with that container info node, I want to be able, let's say I want that this button text is exactly the same like the text I have here on my hierarchy container, right? So let's say I want to be the text, let's call it home. Right, so this will be my home button, right? So how can I access now this text of my container? To access this, we basically have here that container info. If we put that in, then you can see now things changed here already a little bit. Let me change that here to outputs only. So you can see here we get access to the name, we get access to the name text, right? So these are both strings. So we get access to the container name, we get access to the container name text. We have here some name index, we have some link index. Yeah, if you go, you can also put containers into containers, right? So this is basically then what the link index is here and the top level and so on, right? And also the composition name, right? And we will also know, is it a nested scene or how many nested levels this scene will have, right? So all these informations we can get from this, basically from this container node, right? So let's do that now. So I want that this text is actually here my, let's connect here our source, sorry, not our source. Let's connect here our, sorry, I'm here on the outputs. Let's bring that back. Let's connect here our text to our name text, right? So now our text node will read always the string of our container, right? So let's go outside here and let's say if I call that back button, right? Then we change with this to name. So this is sometimes very, very handy. So let's copy that guy. Let's copy that and let's copy that again. So let's say this is back, this is home, and this is whatever, forward, right? Let's make that also large, whatever. And let's put here a range node in front. You should know that already from the past tutorials, right? So let's put that node here and let's give it here over X a center chain Let's give it a little bit offset, right? Now we have here our 3 buttons, back, home, and forward, right? So, and if we jump inside our home now and we check here our container info, now we can see this is, we have here, for example, our name index, link index, right? So if we go back to this guy, let's check that. So now we have here the link index 2, right? So this is basically the amount of yeah, containers you have, right? So here's the link at index 0. Let's go to the second one. This should be link index 1, right? So we have it here. And let's go to the third one, and this should be link index 2, right? So this is basically, yeah, all the infos you can get from the container info node, right? Okay, so very handy and will save you a lot of time. So last node, what we will cover here now, the last container node is a container output, okay? So let me delete all these guys here again. So let's say you have something and you want to create something like a mover, and whatever you put behind that mover or that functionality, yeah, it's exchangeable, right? So let's do that. Let's use a hierarchy container. And let's say behind that hierarchy container, you want to put now whatever, any geometry, let's say a cube, right? So if we do that, wonderful, we have a cube here, and now we can go inside here and we can build logic, okay? We can basically build logic inside this container. So let me delete this output and let me go back. What you can see now, if we delete that output, I'm not able to put that cube behind, right? So because we don't have a container output node, okay? So we need that if you want to put or bind more things behind your hierarchy container. If you want to do that, if you want to bind more nodes behind on the right side of this node, then you need to have a container output, okay? So let's do that again. So let's build something first. Let's simply say we have here axis, and this axis is simply rotating, right? So let's say we rotate it over the X or the Y and over the Z, something like that. So no problem at all. Let's also expose them that we have a bit more access, right? So now we have 3 movers for rotation X, rotation Y, rotation Z. Let's make them maybe a bit slower. Let's put them to 2 seconds, right? And now, again, if we go outside, we only have an axis here, but I'm still not able to put a cube behind, right? Because we are still missing the container output. So let's add that container output now. Let's go back to the world, and we have here our container output. Let's put it here. Let's go back out, and now we should be able to put our cube behind. And you can see we don't see anything. Why we don't see anything? Why we don't see anything? So our rotation, we don't see anything actually because our rotation is just too small. Yeah. So if I make this guy larger, let's put another axis here in front. Let's make this guy larger. So you actually can see something is happening, right? But we only move it over all 3 yeah, axes by 1 degree, right? So let's change that from 0 to 360, right? And now our container node with the container output node is doing what we developed inside this container, right? So rotation, movement, for example, right? And the nice thing about that, you simply can put whatever you want now behind this guy. A sphere is actually very boring because we don't see any rotation on the sphere, but let's use here a cylinder, right? So we can put here whatever we want. We even can use here some more functionality, right? Things like that. And of course, now both of that guys are one object which will be rotated based on the development what we made inside here, right? So I think we covered now the hierarchy container, the content container node. We covered the container info node, and we also covered the container output node. So I think with this 4 nodes, you are able now to create very complex scenes. You can use these nodes to keep your logic and your hierarchy organized, right? So use it and try it out on your own.